6 months after the elephant attack that nearly claimed Kesey's life, the lioness had made a remarkable recovery. Though she would always carry scars from her heroic defense of Hope, her strength and vitality had largely returned. More importantly, her bond with Hope had deepened through their shared trauma, creating a relationship that continued to amaze researchers and inspire people worldwide. The special conservation facility constructed around their original territory had become a model for innovative wildlife management. The Kesey Hope Research Center, as it came to be known, attracted scientists from every continent who came to study the ongoing relationship between the unlikely pair. Dr. Mitchell had been appointed as the center's director, ensuring continuity in the long-term observation of their extraordinary bond. Hope, now 10 months old and weighing over 20 pounds, had grown into a confident and remarkable young gorilla. Her unique upbringing had created a personality that blended gorilla intelligence with an unusual fearlessness and social adaptability. She moved effortlessly between interactions with Kesey and the lion cubs, communications with human researchers, and explorations of her expanding world. The introduction of other rescued gorilla infants to the facility had provided Hope with her first opportunities to interact with her own species. Dr. Mbeki, who had remained at the center to oversee this crucial aspect of Hope's development, was amazed by how quickly she adapted to gorilla social behaviors while maintaining her special relationship with Kesey. Two young gorillas, rescued from different poaching incidents, had been brought to the center specifically to provide Hope with appropriate species socialization. Django, a male infant slightly younger than Hope, and Amani, a female of similar age, were carefully introduced under controlled conditions. The results exceeded all expectations. Hope demonstrated remarkable social intelligence in her interactions with the other gorillas. She appeared to understand that different behaviors were appropriate for different relationships. With Django and Amani, she displayed typical gorilla play and communication patterns. With Kesey, she maintained the unique blend of gorilla and lion behaviors that had characterized their relationship from the beginning. The research team documented this behavioral flexibility as evidence of advanced cognitive development that might have been enhanced by Hope's exposure to multiple species in social contexts. Rather than being confused about her identity, Hope had developed a sophisticated understanding of social nuance that made her exceptionally adaptable. Kesey's role evolved as Hope matured and gained gorilla companions. The lioness remained Hope's primary attachment figure and source of emotional security, but she graciously allowed the young gorilla increasing independence to explore relationships with her own species. This maternal wisdom demonstrated an understanding that transcended species boundaries. The most remarkable development came when Hope began serving as a bridge between the lions and gorillas at the facility. Her unique position allowed her to facilitate peaceful coexistence between species that would never interact in nature. She would comfort frightened gorilla infants by bringing them near Kesey, who seemed to understand her role as a gentle giant offering protection to all the facility's young animals. Dr. Volkoff's research on the emotional and psychological aspects of Hope's development revealed groundbreaking insights into animal consciousness and empathy. Hope demonstrated what appeared to be genuine grief when separated from Kesey for extended periods, and showed signs of understanding death and loss that were previously thought to be unique to humans and perhaps a few other higher primates. The facility's success attracted international attention and funding that allowed for expansion of the research programs. The Kesey Hope Center became a model for innovative approaches to wildlife conservation that prioritized individual animal welfare while advancing scientific understanding. The facility now housed over a dozen rescued primates and several lions, all living in carefully managed social groups. Educational programs at the center reached millions of people worldwide through virtual tours, documentaries, and live streaming of daily activities. Hope and Kesey's story had become a powerful tool for conservation education, inspiring a new generation of wildlife protectors and researchers. As Hope approached her first birthday, plans were being developed for her future that would honor both her unique upbringing and her species-specific needs. The facility was expanding to include larger enclosures that would allow for more natural behaviors, while maintaining the social bonds that had proven so beneficial to all the animals involved. Kesey, now 6 years old and in her prime, had never shown any desire to return to a wild pride structure. Her devotion to hope and acceptance of the facility's routine suggested that she had found a purpose that satisfied her deeply. The research team respected her choice while ensuring that her own physical and emotional needs were fully met. The relationship between Cassie and Hope had evolved beyond the initial maternal bond to become something unique in the animal kingdom, a cross-species friendship based on mutual affection, respect, and understanding. They spent their days playing together, grooming each other, and simply enjoying each other's company in ways that continued to challenge scientific understanding of animal relationships. International recognition of the center's work came in the form of prestigious awards and research grants that ensured the long-term sustainability of the program. Dr. Mitchell's pioneering approach to interspecies relationships had opened new fields of study in animal behavior, conservation psychology, and wildlife management ethics. The story that had begun with a desperate infant gorilla and a compassionate lioness had grown into a global movement celebrating the power of love to transcend all boundaries. Hope and Casey's daily interactions continued to provide evidence that emotions, empathy, and familial bonds were far more universal in the animal kingdom than previously believed. Visitors to the center often left transformed by witnessing the gentle interactions between Hope and Cassie. Children were particularly moved by the friendship, learning valuable lessons about acceptance, compassion, and the importance of protecting wildlife. The center's educational impact extended far beyond scientific research to influence conservation attitudes worldwide. As the sun set over the African savanna on Hope's first birthday, Casey and Hope could be seen resting together under their favorite acacia tree. Hope, now a confident young gorilla with bright eyes and an adventurous spirit, snuggled against Casey's warm fur just as she had on that first desperate night when she was a helpless infant crying for her mother. The lioness, her battle scars hidden by her magnificent mane, purred softly as she groomed her adoptive daughter with the same gentle care she had shown from the very beginning. Their bond, forged in an act of incredible compassion and strengthened through shared challenges, had become a testament to the boundless nature of love. The unimaginable had indeed occurred, not just in Cassie's heroic sacrifice to save Hope, but in the creation of a relationship that proved love knows no species boundaries. Their story continued to inspire millions around the world, reminding everyone that in a world often divided by differences, the most powerful force of all remains the simple act of caring for another living being, regardless of who or what they might be. Dr. Mitchell's final research notes that evening captured the essence of what they had all witnessed. In studying Hope and Casey, we have learned that family is not defined by genetics or species, but by the choice to love unconditionally. They have taught us that the barriers we perceive between ourselves and others often exist only in our minds, and that compassion has the power to create bonds stronger than any natural law. The decision deadline was set for the following Monday. After weeks of international debate, governmental pressure, and scientific disagreement, Hope's fate would finally be determined by a panel of experts convening in Nairobi. Dr. Mitchell spent the weekend making final preparations for what might be her last observations of Cassie and Hope together. On Sunday morning, as golden light filtered across the savannah, something unprecedented occurred that would change everything. Hope, now nearly 4 months old and increasingly adventurous, had wandered slightly farther from Cassie than usual while investigating a colorful butterfly. The lioness was resting in the shade, keeping one eye on her adoptive daughter's exploration. A sudden commotion erupted from the nearby acacia grove. A massive bull elephant, old and unpredictable, had been driven from his herd due to aggressive behavior. These solitary males were known to be extremely dangerous, attacking anything they perceived as a threat. The elephant emerged from the trees, trumpeting loudly and showing clear signs of distress and aggression. Hope, startled by the enormous creature and the deafening noise, froze in terror. She was directly in the elephant's path, too far from Cassie to reach safety quickly. The infant's panicked cries filled the air as the massive bull charged toward her, his tusks gleaming menacingly in the morning sun. What happened next defied every expectation and challenged the understanding of even the most experienced wildlife researchers. Cassie, despite being vastly outweighed and outmatched by the elephant, launched herself directly at the charging bull. Her roar echoed across the savannah as she positioned herself between Hope and certain death. The collision was devastating. The elephant's tusks caught Casey in the shoulder, sending her tumbling across the rocky ground. But her sacrifice achieved its purpose. The bull elephant, surprised by the lioness's fierce attack, momentarily halted his charge. Those precious seconds gave Dr. Mitchell and her team the opportunity they needed to activate emergency protocols. The research team's emergency flares and noisemakers, designed for exactly such situations, finally succeeded in driving the confused elephant away from the area. But the damage was already done. Casey lay motionless near the rocks where she had fallen, her breathing shallow and labored. Hope, traumatized but physically unharmed, crawled to Casey's side and began making desperate distress calls. The infant gorilla refused to leave her adoptive mother, despite the approaching humans who were trying to help. Her loyalty to Casey in this moment of crisis demonstrated the profound depth of their bond. Dr. Patel worked frantically to assess Casey's injuries, while the rest of the team prepared emergency medical equipment. The lioness had suffered severe internal injuries and substantial blood loss. Her chances of survival were slim, but she continued to respond to Hope's presence, lifting her massive head slightly whenever the infant touched her. The medical team established a field hospital around Casey, working desperately to stabilize her condition. Throughout the emergency procedures, Hope remained pressed against her adoptive mother's side, offering what comfort she could. The sight of the tiny gorilla trying to care for the wounded lioness brought tears to the eyes of even the most hardened researchers. News of the attack spread rapidly through the international media covering Hope's story. The image of Casey's heroic sacrifice to save Hope became a powerful symbol that transcended the earlier debates about their relationship. Public opinion shifted dramatically as people around the world were moved by the lioness's selfless act of maternal love. Dr. Mbeki, who had been preparing to remove Hope the following day, found himself reconsidering his position. He had witnessed firsthand the depth of devotion between the two animals, something that challenged his professional assumptions about interspecies relationships. The gorilla specialist began working alongside Dr. Mitchell's team to provide the best possible care for both animals. As Casey fought for her life, Hope's behavior provided crucial insights into gorilla emotional intelligence. The infant displayed clear signs of grief and anxiety, refusing to eat and becoming increasingly distressed when separated from Casey for medical procedures. Her responses suggested a level of understanding about death and loss that was remarkable for such a young animal. The worldwide outpouring of support for Casey and Hope was unprecedented. Donations poured in from individuals and organizations around the globe to fund the lioness's medical care. Veterinary specialists offered their services free of charge, and wildlife rehabilitation facilities pledged resources to support whatever decision was made about the pair's future. Local Maasai communities organized traditional ceremonies, asking their ancestors to guide Casey's spirit in its struggle between life and death. Elder Sankel spent hours beside the wounded lioness, chanting ancient prayers and offering blessings. His presence seemed to calm both Casey and Hope during the most critical moments. After 48 hours of intensive care, Casey began showing signs of improvement. Her vital signs stabilized, and she regained consciousness for brief periods. During these moments of awareness, her first instinct was always to check on Hope's welfare, demonstrating that even severe trauma had not diminished her maternal devotion. The recovery process was slow and uncertain. Casey would require months of careful monitoring and rehabilitation before her injuries fully healed. The question of whether she would ever regain her full strength and mobility remained unanswered. However, her survival had already achieved something remarkable. It had united previously opposing factions in their commitment to preserving her relationship with Hope. Dr. Greenwood's sanctuary in Uganda revised their proposal to accommodate Casey's medical needs. They offered to create a specialized facility where both animals could receive appropriate care while their unique bond was preserved and studied. This solution addressed the concerns of both conservationists and researchers, while prioritizing the welfare of the individual animals involved. The Kenyan government, moved by the international attention and public support, declared the area around the research site a special conservation zone. This designation would provide permanent protection for any future cases of unusual animal behavior, while supporting ongoing scientific research. As Casey slowly recovered, Lying in the specially constructed shelter with Hope constantly by her side, the research team realized they were witnessing something that would be remembered long after their scientific papers were published. The story of a lioness who defied nature to save an infant gorilla had become a testament to the power of love to transcend all boundaries. Hope, now 4.5 months old, continued to thrive despite the trauma she had experienced. Her devotion to Cassie during the lioness's recovery demonstrated emotional maturity that surprised the researchers. She would bring Casey food, groom her wounds gently, and provide comfort during painful medical procedures. The approaching Monday deadline for Hope's removal had become irrelevant. Public opinion, scientific interest, and governmental support had all aligned in favor of preserving the extraordinary relationship between Cassie and Hope. The focus had shifted from separation to finding ways to support their continued bond while addressing their individual needs as they both grew and developed. The arrival of Dr. Robert Mbeki and his team from the Congo created an atmosphere of tension that even the animals could sense. Dr. Mbeki was internationally renowned for his work with mountain gorillas and had successfully reintegrated dozens of orphaned infants with wild populations. His reputation for prioritizing gorilla welfare above all other considerations made him a formidable opponent to the current arrangement. Hope, now 3 months old and weighing 12 pounds, had become remarkably adapted to life with the lions. She moved with confidence through the pride's territory, sleeping nestled against Casey's warm fur each night and playing with the lion cubs during the day. To outside observers, she appeared to be a content and healthy young primate, despite her unusual family structure. Dr. Mbeki's initial assessment was swift and uncompromising. After observing Hope for 2 days, he declared that immediate intervention was necessary to prevent permanent psychological damage. He pointed out that Hope was already showing concerning signs of species confusion, attempting to roar instead of making proper gorilla vocalizations, and displaying feline body language that would be meaningless to other gorillas. The confrontation between Dr. Mbeki and Dr. Mitchell became the focal point of an international scientific debate. Dr. Mitchell argued that Hope's case provided unprecedented insights into animal cognition, interspecies bonding, and the plasticity of maternal behavior. She presented evidence that Hope was thriving physically and emotionally under Cassie's care and warned that forced separation could cause severe trauma to both animals. Dr. Mbeki countered with decades of experience in gorilla rehabilitation. He explained that every day Hope spent with lions was making her eventual reintegration exponentially more difficult. Young gorillas learned critical survival skills and social behaviors during their first year of life. Hope was missing these crucial developmental experiences and instead learning behaviors that would make her an outcast among her own species. The debate took on additional complexity when DNA analysis finally revealed Hope's origins. The infant was identified as belonging to the Rwandan mountain gorilla population, one of the most endangered subspecies in the world. This discovery added conservation implications to the already complex ethical considerations surrounding her care. Wildlife authorities from 3 different countries became involved as Hope's case gained international attention. The Rwandan government demanded Hope's return to support their mountain gorilla conservation program. Kenyan officials wanted to maintain their research collaboration with Dr. Mitchell's team. Congolese authorities, supporting Dr. Mbeki's position, argued for immediate transfer to their rehabilitation facility. While the humans debated Hope's future, Cassie seemed to sense the growing threat to their relationship. The lioness became increasingly protective, rarely allowing Hope out of her sight and showing signs of stress whenever strangers approached. Her behavior suggested an intelligence and emotional depth that surprised even experienced animal researchers. The crisis deepened when Hope fell seriously ill. What started as mild digestive upset quickly progressed to severe dehydration and fever. Dr. Patel worked around the clock to stabilize the infant, while Casey maintained a constant vigil beside the makeshift medical station. The lioness refused to eat or drink, focusing entirely on Hope's welfare. During Hope's illness, something remarkable occurred that would influence all future decisions about her care. Cassie began exhibiting behaviors that closely resembled medical care. She would gently lick Hope's forehead when the infant had a fever, position her body to provide optimal shade and ventilation, and even appeared to understand when medical Procedures were helping Hope rather than causing harm. Dr. Volkov documented these behaviors as evidence of advanced cognitive empathy that went beyond simple maternal instinct. Casey was actively participating in Hope's medical care, demonstrating an understanding of cause and effect that challenged conventional assumptions about animal intelligence. The illness also revealed the depth of Hope's attachment to Casey. During the worst phases of her fever, Hope would only calm down when she could feel Casey's presence. Medical interventions that required separating her from the Lioness were met with such severe distress that they actually hindered her recovery. As Hope slowly recovered, Dr. Mbeki was forced to acknowledge the complexity of the bond between the two animals. He had never encountered a case where interspecies attachment was so profound and seemingly beneficial to both parties. However, he maintained his position that Hope's long-term welfare required proper gorilla socialization. A potential compromise emerged when Dr. Sarah Greenwood, director of an innovative primate sanctuary in Uganda, proposed a gradual transition plan. Her facility housed several young gorillas who had been rescued from poachers and could provide Hope with appropriate species socialization while allowing for continued contact with Casey. During the adjustment period, the plan involved transporting both Hope and Casey to the sanctuary, where controlled interactions could continue while Hope was gradually introduced to other gorillas. This approach would allow researchers to study the transition process while prioritizing the welfare of both animals. However, implementing this plan presented enormous logistical challenges. Transporting a wild lioness was dangerous and potentially traumatic. There were also concerns about introducing Casey to an environment where she would be the only lion among gorillas and other primates. Local communities around the research site began taking sides in the debate about Hope's future. Many Maasai elders who had observed the unusual pair from the beginning supported allowing them to remain together. They viewed the relationship as a sacred bond that should not be broken by human interference. The pressure intensified when international media began portraying the situation as a battle between cold scientific logic and natural compassion. Social media campaigns supporting both positions gained millions of followers. Let Hope Choose became a global hashtag. Though the irony of asking a 3-month-old gorilla to make such a decision was lost on many supporters, Dr. Mitchell found herself defending not just her research but her fundamental beliefs about animal welfare and scientific ethics. She received death threats from extremists on both sides while also being hailed as a pioneer in understanding animal emotions. The stress of the situation was taking its toll on everyone involved in Hope's care. As the debate raged, Hope continued to grow and develop under Casey's watchful care. She was now mobile enough to explore her environment independently, while still seeking comfort and security from her adoptive mother. The research team documented every interaction, knowing that their observations might be the last of this extraordinary relationship. The moment of decision was rapidly approaching. Government officials, conservation authorities, and scientific organizations all demanded resolution. Meanwhile, Cassie and Hope remained blissfully unaware of the human machinations surrounding their future, continuing their daily routine of play, grooming, and mutual affection that had captured the world's attention and challenged everything people thought they knew about the boundaries of love. 2 months into their extraordinary relationship, Hope had grown from a helpless infant into an active, curious young gorilla. She now weighed nearly 8 pounds and was beginning to show the strength and agility characteristic of her species. This growth brought new challenges that no one had anticipated when the unlikely partnership began. Casey's pride, led by the dominant male Django, had initially kept their distance from the unusual adoption. However, as Hope became more mobile and Casey's attention remained divided, tensions within the pride began to surface. Django viewed Hope as a potential threat to the pride's hunting efficiency and began displaying aggressive postures whenever he encountered the infant. Dr. Mitchell observed these interactions with growing concern. Lion prides operated under strict hierarchies and social rules that had evolved over thousands of years. Hope's presence was disrupting these natural patterns in ways that could potentially endanger both her and Cassie. The lioness found herself caught between her loyalty to her pride and her maternal bond with Hope. The situation became more complex when Cassie's sister Amara gave birth to 2 lion cubs, The arrival of natural offspring within the Pride created a direct comparison that highlighted the unusual nature of Kesey's relationship with Hope. Other Pride members began showing increased aggression toward the gorilla infant, viewing her as competition for resources and attention. Hope, oblivious to the social tensions surrounding her, continued to thrive under Kesey's care. She had developed a unique set of behaviors that combined gorilla instincts with learned responses from her lion family. She would attempt to roar like Kesey, producing adorable squeaking sounds that delighted the research team but concerned animal behaviorists studying her. Development Dr. Volkov documented troubling signs that Hope was not developing proper species-specific behaviors. Young gorillas typically learned complex social interactions by observing their mothers and other troop members. Hope's exposure was limited to lion behaviors, which could handicap her if she ever needed to integrate with other gorillas. The research team faced increasing pressure from wildlife authorities to make decisions about Hope's future. The Kenyan Wildlife Service was concerned about the precedent being set by allowing such extensive human intervention in wild animal behavior. They argued that resources being devoted to one infant could be better used for broader conservation efforts, affecting entire populations. A critical incident occurred when Hope wandered too far from Kesey during a play session. She encountered a young male lion from a rival pride who saw her as easy prey. Kesey's response was swift and violent, engaging in a fierce battle to protect Hope. Though she successfully drove off the intruder, Kesey sustained serious injuries that required immediate veterinary attention. Dr. Patel worked frantically to treat Kesey's wounds while Hope clung desperately to her adoptive mother's fur. The infant's distress was heartbreaking to witness. She refused to eat or accept comfort from the human caregivers, crying continuously for Kesey. The lioness, despite her pain, attempted to reassure Hope with gentle purring and nuzzling. The attack forced the research team to confront the harsh reality that their protective measures might not be sufficient to ensure both animals' safety. The African savanna was inherently dangerous, and Hope's presence was making Kesey a target for conflicts she would normally avoid. During Kesey's recovery, an unexpected ally emerged. Amara, Kesey's sister, began showing interest in Hope. Perhaps driven by her own maternal instincts following the recent birth of her cubs, Amara approached the research station and began interacting gently with the gorilla infant. This development offered a glimmer of hope for a solution that might allow Hope to remain with the pride. The introduction of Hope to Amara's cubs created a fascinating dynamic. The lion cubs were roughly the same age as Hope, and initially treated her as another playmate. They engaged in typical kitten play behaviors, pouncing, wrestling, and chasing, while Hope attempted to mimic their movements with varying degrees of success. Dr. Okoye observed that Hope's interactions with the lion cubs were helping her develop important social skills, even if they weren't specifically gorilla behaviors. She was learning about hierarchy, competition, and cooperation within a group structure. These lessons might prove valuable regardless of her future living situation. As Kesey recovered from her injuries, she seemed to recognize the value of her sister's help with Hope. For the first time since adopting the infant, Kesey allowed another lion to take primary responsibility for Hope's care for extended periods. This development suggested that the lioness was beginning to understand that raising Hope required more support than she could provide alone. The research team began exploring the possibility of gradually expanding Hope's social circle within the pride while maintaining the strong bond with Kesey. This approach would provide Hope with more diverse social experiences while preserving the emotional security that Kesey represented. However, not all pride members were as accepting as Amara. Some of the older lions continued to view Hope with suspicion and hostility. The research team had to maintain constant vigilance to prevent confrontations that could result in tragedy for the young. Gorilla media attention reached a fever pitch when footage of Hope playing with lion cubs was released. The images captured hearts worldwide, but they also intensified debates about the ethics of the ongoing experiment. Animal rights activists argued that Hope was being denied her right to a natural gorilla upbringing, while others celebrated the demonstration of love transcending species boundaries. International primate experts weighed in with conflicting opinions about Hope's future. Some insisted that immediate removal to a gorilla sanctuary was essential for her proper development. Others argued that the unique data being collected justified continuing the current arrangement, at least until Hope was old enough to make such a transition less traumatic. The pressure reached a breaking point when a team of guerrilla specialists arrived from the Congo with plans to remove Hope and transport her to a mountain gorilla rehabilitation program. They argued that every day Hope spent with lions was making her eventual integration with her own species more difficult and potentially impossible. Dr. Mitchell found herself in the middle of an international controversy that went far beyond scientific research. The decisions made about Hope's future would set precedents for wildlife management and interspecies relationships. More importantly, they would determine the fate of two animals who had formed a bond that challenged everything humans thought they knew about love, family, and the barriers between species. As the debate raged, Kessie continued her devoted care of Hope, unaware that forces beyond her control were gathering to potentially separate them forever. The lioness's simple act of compassion had created ripple effects that extended far beyond the African savanna, where their story began. 3 days into the medical intervention, Hope's condition began to stabilize. The specialized primate formula was providing the nutrition her growing body desperately needed, and Dr. Patel's careful monitoring had prevented the dehydration from becoming life-threatening. But the real breakthrough came when the medical team discovered something that would change their entire approach to Hope's care. Kessie had begun producing milk. Despite not having given birth recently, the lioness's body had responded to the presence of Hope by triggering lactation. This phenomenon, known as induced lactation, was extremely rare in the wild and had never been documented between different species. Dr. Patel was amazed to find that Kessie's milk contained many of the essential nutrients that Hope needed. Though it still required supplementation with specialized formula, the discovery led to a revolutionary decision. Rather than completely separating Hope from Kessie, the team would attempt to create a cooperative care arrangement. Hope would continue receiving medical attention and proper nutrition from the humans while maintaining her emotional bond with Kessie. It was an experiment that had never been tried before. Setting up this arrangement required careful planning and constant supervision. The research team established a permanent camp near Kessie's chosen territory, complete with medical equipment and communication systems. Dr. Mitchell coordinated with wildlife authorities to ensure that the area was protected from poachers and other human interference. Hope's recovery accelerated under this dual care system. She gained weight steadily and became more active and alert. Her natural gorilla behaviors began to emerge as her health improved. She started showing interest in vegetation, though Kessie continued to offer inappropriate meat-based foods out of instinct. The lioness adapted to the human presence with remarkable tolerance. She seemed to understand that the researchers were helping Hope, and gradually allowed them closer access to the infant. Dr. Mitchell was particularly amazed when Kessie began bringing Hope directly to the medical station at feeding times, as if she had learned the schedule. Word of the unique arrangement spread throughout the scientific community, attracting researchers from around the globe. Dr. Anna Volkov, a specialist in animal psychology from Russia, arrived to study the emotional aspects of the interspecies bond. Her observations revealed that both Kessie and Hope displayed genuine attachment behaviors, typically seen between mothers and offspring. The lioness showed signs of anxiety whenever Hope was taken out of her sight for medical procedures. She would pace, vocalize, and position herself where she could maintain visual contact with the infant. Hope, for her part, became distressed when separated from Kessie and would only calm down when she could see or hear the lioness. As Hope grew stronger, new challenges emerged. The infant began displaying natural gorilla behaviors that sometimes conflicted with Kessie's lion instincts. Hope wanted to climb and explore vegetation, while Kessie tried to keep her close to the ground in typical feline territory. The lioness became frustrated when Hope showed no interest in the hunting lessons she attempted to provide. Dr. Okoye worked with the team to introduce appropriate stimulation for Hope's developing mind. They created simple climbing structures and provided safe vegetation for the infant to explore. Kessie watched these activities with apparent confusion, but gradually accepted that Hope's needs were different from those of lion cubs. The most touching development came when Hope began attempting to groom Kessie in return. Using her tiny fingers, she would carefully pick through the lioness's fur, mimicking the grooming behavior she had observed. Casey would lie perfectly still during these sessions, allowing the infant to explore her massive form with complete trust. Local media attention intensified as footage of Casey and Hope's daily interactions spread across social networks. The story resonated with people worldwide, becoming a symbol of compassion that transcended species boundaries. Conservation organizations used their story to highlight the importance of protecting wildlife habitats and preventing poaching. However, the increased attention also brought unwanted problems. Tourist operators began offering unauthorized viewing trips, disrupting the careful environment the research team had established. Government officials had to intervene to create a protected zone around the research site to prevent interference with the ongoing study. The research team faced criticism from some quarters of the scientific community. Traditional wildlife management protocols suggested that human intervention should be minimal, allowing natural selection to proceed without interference. Some argued that keeping Hope with Casey was preventing the infant from learning proper gorilla behaviors that would be essential for eventual reintegration with her own species. Dr. Mitchell defended their approach in a series of research papers and presentations. She argued that the unique circumstances of Hope's survival created an unprecedented opportunity to study interspecies bonding and maternal behavior. The data they were collecting was providing valuable insights into animal cognition and emotional capacity. As Hope approached her second month with Casey, her personality began to emerge more distinctly. She was playful and curious, traits that sometimes exhausted the older Lioness but clearly brought her joy. Casey would often engage in gentle play sessions with Hope, using her massive paws to bat softly at the infant in a way that would be appropriate for lion cubs. The research team documented remarkable communication patterns developing between the pair. Casey had learned to respond to Hope's specific vocalizations, differentiating between calls for attention, food, comfort, or play. Hope, meanwhile, had begun making soft chuffing sounds similar to those used by lions, attempting to communicate with Casey in her own language. Dr. Patel's medical monitoring showed that Hope was developing normally in most respects. Her motor skills were advancing appropriately for her age, and her cognitive development appeared unimpaired by her unusual upbringing. However, some concerning patterns were emerging that would require careful attention as she continued to grow. The question of Hope's future became increasingly pressing as she grew larger and stronger. Eventually, she would need to learn proper gorilla social behaviors and possibly be reintegrated with her own species. But the bond with Casey had become so strong that separation might cause severe trauma to both animals. Dr. Mitchell began corresponding with primate sanctuaries and rehabilitation centers, exploring options for Hope's long-term care. The goal was to find a solution that would honor the extraordinary relationship between Casey and Hope, while ensuring both animals' welfare for the rest of their lives. Meanwhile, Casey's own pride had begun showing interest in the unusual situation. Other lionesses occasionally approached to investigate Hope, though Casey remained protective and selective about which members of her pride were allowed near the infant. This development suggested that Hope might eventually be accepted by the entire pride, creating an even more complex situation for the research team to navigate. Dr. Mitchell's satellite phone buzzed with urgent calls from wildlife organizations around the world. News of Casey and Hope had spread like wildfire through social media, capturing the attention of millions who were following the unlikely pair's story. Animal behaviorists, veterinarians, and conservationists were all weighing in on what should be done. Meanwhile, Casey had developed a routine that demonstrated remarkable adaptability. Each morning, she would gently wake Hope by nuzzling the infant with her massive head. The gorilla baby had learned to grip Casey's mane with tiny fingers, much like it would have clung to its mother's fur in the wild. The lioness seemed to understand the infant's need for this contact and moved slowly to accommodate Hope's small size and limited strength. The research team noticed that Casey had begun modifying her natural behaviors to better care for Hope. Instead of the quick, efficient movements typical of a predator, she moved with careful deliberation when the infant was nearby. Her hunting trips became shorter and less frequent, as she refused to leave Hope alone for extended periods. Dr. James Okoye, a primatologist who had flown in from Kenya, observed the pair through high-powered telescopes. He was particularly interested in how Hope was responding to Casey's care. Despite being only weeks old, the gorilla infant was already showing signs of recognizing the lioness as its caregiver. When Casey returned from brief hunting excursions, Hope would make excited chirping sounds and reach toward her with outstretched arms. The most remarkable development came when Casey began teaching Hope survival skills that were completely inappropriate for a gorilla but demonstrated her genuine attempt to raise the infant as her own. She would bring Hope to water sources, showing the baby how to drink by lapping with her tongue. She attempted to teach hunting behaviors by bringing disabled prey animals near Hope, not understanding that gorillas were herbivores. Local Maasai tribesmen, who had lived alongside wildlife for generations, shared their own observations with the research team. Elder Sankele, whose family had herded cattle in the area for decades, spoke of the unprecedented nature of what they were witnessing. "In all my years," he said, "I have never seen such a thing. The spirits of the animals have chosen to show us something special." As Hope entered its third week under Casey's care, the infant's condition became increasingly precarious. Despite the lioness's devoted attention, the baby gorilla was losing weight and becoming lethargic. Dr. Mitchell consulted with veterinary experts via video calls, all of whom agreed that immediate intervention was necessary to save Hope's life. The decision to separate Hope from Casey was one of the most difficult the research team had ever faced. They knew that removing the infant would likely cause severe emotional distress to the lioness, who had formed a deep maternal bond with the baby. However, Hope's survival depended on receiving proper nutrition and medical care that only humans could provide. Dr. Lisa Patel, a wildlife veterinarian, arrived with specialized equipment and formula designed for orphaned primate infants. The plan was to approach Casey during her afternoon rest period when she would be most relaxed. The team had observed that this was typically when Casey allowed Hope the most freedom to move around independently. The intervention did not go as smoothly as hoped. As the team approached, Casey immediately sensed potential danger to Hope. Her protective instincts, already heightened by weeks of caring for the vulnerable infant, kicked into overdrive. She moved to shield Hope with her body, her golden eyes fixed on the approaching humans with unmistakable warning. Dr. Mitchell, who had spent the most time observing the pair, took the lead in the delicate operation. She spoke in low, soothing tones while slowly approaching, with food that she hoped would distract Casey long enough for Dr. Patel to reach Hope. The lioness accepted the offering but never took her eyes off the humans or moved away from the infant. What happened next surprised everyone. As Dr. Patel knelt down near Hope, the tiny gorilla began crying for Casey with desperate intensity. The lioness responded with distressed vocalizations that the research team had never heard before. It was clear that the bond between them was far stronger than anyone had anticipated. Hope reached toward Casey, even as Dr. Patel carefully picked up the infant to perform a quick health assessment. The baby's grip on Dr. Patel's clothing was weak, and its responses to stimuli were concerning. It was evident that despite Casey's best efforts, Hope was severely malnourished and dehydrated. The medical examination revealed that Hope was a female infant, approximately 3 weeks old, and showing signs of significant stress and malnutrition. Her weight was well below normal for a gorilla of her age, and she exhibited symptoms of digestive issues from attempting to process inappropriate foods that Casey had offered. Dr. Patel made the critical decision to begin immediate treatment in the field, rather than risk transporting Hope in her weakened condition. She set up a temporary medical station under a canvas shelter, while Casey watched anxiously from nearby. The lioness refused to leave the area, pacing restlessly and calling to Hope with soft chuffing sounds. The most heart-wrenching moment came when Hope was given her first proper feeding of primate formula. The infant's desperate hunger was evident as she consumed the nutrition her body had been craving. But even as she fed, Hope continued to reach toward Casey, seeking the comfort and security that only the lioness had provided during her short life. Casey seemed to understand that the humans were helping Hope, but her distress was palpable. She lay down as close to the medical station as the team would allow, her eyes never leaving the infant she had claimed as her own. Her behavior demonstrated a level of emotional attachment that challenged conventional understanding of predator psychology. As night fell, the research team faced another difficult decision. Hope needed continuous monitoring and regular feeding to survive, but separating her completely from Kesey might cause additional trauma to both animals. They decided to attempt an unprecedented arrangement, allowing Kesey to remain nearby while providing round-the-clock medical care to Hope. The Lioness seemed to approve of this compromise. She settled into a protective position where she could observe Hope while allowing the humans to provide necessary care. Throughout the night, whenever Hope cried, Kesey would respond with gentle rumbling sounds that seemed to comfort the infant even from a distance. Dr. Mitchell documented every interaction, knowing that she was witnessing behavior that might reshape scientific understanding of interspecies relationships and the complexity of animal emotions. The story of Kesey and Hope was just beginning, and the challenges ahead would test the limits of both human intervention and natural instinct. The morning sun cast long shadows across the vast African savanna as Dr. Sarah Mitchell adjusted her binoculars for the third time that hour. She had been tracking the pride of lions for 6 weeks now, documenting their hunting patterns and social behaviors for her research on predator dynamics. What she witnessed that day would challenge everything she thought she knew about the natural world. Kesey, a magnificent lioness with amber eyes and battle scars telling stories of survival, moved through the tall grass with unusual purpose. Unlike her typical hunting prowl, this movement seemed different, almost protective. Dr. Mitchell followed at a safe distance, her heart racing with anticipation of capturing rare footage for her documentary. The lioness stopped near a cluster of acacia trees, her massive head turning left and right as if searching for something specific. The rest of her pride had moved on, following the scent of zebra herds in the distance, but Kesey remained behind. This behavior puzzled Dr. Mitchell, who had observed that lionesses rarely separated from their group unless they were about to give birth or were injured. A soft whimpering sound carried on the wind, barely audible above the rustling leaves. Kesey's ears perked up immediately, and she moved toward the sound with increasing urgency. Dr. Mitchell crept closer, her camera ready to capture whatever was about to unfold. Behind a fallen log nestled in a small depression in the earth lay a tiny gorilla infant. The baby appeared to be only a few days old, its eyes barely open, its tiny fingers grasping at the air as it cried softly for its mother. Dr. Mitchell's breath caught in her throat. Mountain gorillas didn't belong in this part of Africa. This baby was hundreds of miles from where it should be. The most logical explanation was that poachers had captured the infant from its mountain forest home, intending to sell it on the black market. Something must have gone wrong during transport, leaving the helpless creature abandoned in the savanna, where it had no chance of survival. Lions were apex predators, and gorillas were not part of their natural habitat. The expected outcome was clear and heartbreaking. But Kesey did something that defied every law of nature Dr. Mitchell had ever studied. Instead of seeing prey, the lioness approached the gorilla infant with the same gentle care she would show her own cubs. She sniffed the baby carefully, her massive paws moving with surprising delicacy around the tiny creature. The gorilla infant, driven by instinct and desperation, began making the soft grunting sounds that baby primates use to call for their mothers. Remarkably, Kesey responded with a low rumbling purr, the same sound lionesses make to comfort their young. She lay down beside the baby, her warm body creating a protective barrier against the cooling evening air. Dr. Mitchell watched in amazement as Kesey began licking the infant gorilla with the same grooming behavior she would use on her own offspring. The baby's cries gradually subsided, replaced by soft, contented sounds as it snuggled against the lioness's warm fur. As darkness approached, bringing with it the dangers that roamed the African night, Kesey carefully picked up the gorilla infant in her mouth. Her powerful jaws, capable of crushing bone, held the baby with incredible gentleness. She carried the infant to a sheltered spot among the rocks, where she typically rested with her pride. Throughout the night, Dr. Mitchell maintained her vigil, from a safe distance documenting this unprecedented behavior. Kesey never left the baby's side, constantly checking on its welfare and warming it with her body heat. When hyenas approached, drawn by the scent of the unusual pair, Kesey's fierce roars sent them scurrying into the darkness. By morning, word of the extraordinary sighting had spread through the research camp. Other wildlife experts arrived, some skeptical, others fascinated by the implications of what Dr. Mitchell had witnessed. Cross-species adoption was not unknown in the animal kingdom, but typically occurred between animals with similar characteristics or environmental needs. A lioness caring for a gorilla infant was beyond rare. It was revolutionary. The baby gorilla, whom the researchers began calling Hope, seemed to be thriving under Kesey's care. The lioness had somehow triggered her maternal instincts, despite the obvious species difference. She groomed Hope regularly, kept the infant warm, and even attempted to share small pieces of meat, though the gorilla's digestive system was not designed for such food. Dr. Mitchell faced a difficult decision. Should she intervene to save the gorilla infant, knowing that proper care required specialized knowledge and facilities? Or should she continue observing this remarkable relationship that was providing valuable insights into animal behavior and the flexibility of maternal instincts? The research team held urgent discussions about the ethical implications of their situation. Some argued that nature should take its course, while others insisted they had a responsibility to ensure the infant's survival. Meanwhile, Kesey continued her devoted care, seemingly unaware of the controversy her actions had sparked. As the first week progressed, Hope began to show signs of malnutrition despite Kesey's best efforts. Gorilla infants require specific nutrients found only in their mother's milk, and while Kesey's warmth and protection were keeping Hope alive, it was clear that more specialized care would soon be necessary. The lioness seemed to sense the infant's declining health. She became increasingly protective, refusing to leave Hope even when her own pride called to her from across the savannah. Her dedication to this unlikely offspring was both touching and concerning to the researchers, who knew that Kesey's own survival could be at risk if she continued to separate herself from her pride. Dr. Mitchell realized she was witnessing something that might never be documented again in the wild. The bond between Kesey and Hope was challenging scientific understanding of animal behavior, maternal instincts, and the boundaries between species. But time was running out and difficult decisions lay ahead.